I have sat in this chair for more than 30 years. I have heard every excuse, every manipulation, and every performance of innocence that the human mind is capable of producing. I have tried my best to dispense justice with the understanding that the law is not a weapon for the powerful and a wall for everyone else. It is the same law applied the same way to every single person who walks through that door. But never in 3 decades on this bench did I expect a United States Senator to walk into my courtroom, call me by my first name, and inform me as though it were a simple matter of scheduling that my career was something he could end with a phone call. That morning didn't just test my patience. It tested the very foundation of what this courtroom is built to protect. Because what happened wasn't just a legal confrontation. It was a direct assault on the principle that makes this bench mean anything at all. And if you believe, as I do, as I have always believed, that the law applies to everyone, whether you're selling preserves at a Saturday market or writing legislation on Capitol Hill, then you need to hear every word of the story. If you love seeing entitlement walk into the wrong room and find out exactly where it is, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. You are not going to want to miss a second of what comes next. It was a sharp Monday morning in November, the kind of cold that gets into the building before you do. I walked into the courtroom at 8:50 a.m., coffee in hand, expecting the usual organized chaos. People talking to their lawyers, families crowded into the gallery rows, the low hum of a room full of people with problems they're hoping someone can solve. But today, the room was wrong, completely unnervingly silent. The kind of silence that tells you something has already happened before you arrived. I looked at my clerk, Michael. He was standing rather than sitting, which he never does, and his face was the color of chalk. He didn't say good morning. He didn't hand me anything. He simply looked toward the gallery and said very quietly, "Judge, front row." I put on my glasses and looked up. Sitting in the public gallery, right where ordinary people sit, right where the families and the witnesses and the court watchers sit, was a man in a dark navy suit that had not been purchased anywhere in this city. On his lapel, an American flag pin. Behind him, 2 aides and a personal attorney arranged like furniture. He was sitting with the particular stillness of someone who has already decided how the morning ends. And he was looking at my bench like a man who had come to collect something that belonged to him. It was Senator Victor Caldwell, 3 terms in office, presidential ambitions, the kind of political capital that makes staffers lower their voices when his name comes up. And he was staring at my bench like a man who had come to collect something that belonged to him. I looked down at the docket. The name on the file read Natalie Caldwell, age 26. Aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, fleeing the scene of an accident. His daughter, what he didn't know, what he was about to find out was that he had walked into the wrong courtroom. I banged the gavel and called the session to order. The bailiff announced the case. I looked toward the prosecutor's table, ready to begin. Senator Caldwell stood up. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't ask to be recognized. He didn't do any of the things that every other human being in that room understood were required of them the moment they walked through those doors. He simply stood, buttoned his jacket with the unhurried ease of a man adjusting before a board meeting, and walked through the swinging gate into the well of my courtroom. The space that belongs to attorneys, defendants, and officers of the court, and to no one else without my permission. My bailiff took a step forward. I held up one finger. I wanted to hear this. The senator stopped in front of my bench and looked up at me with a smile that I can only describe as patient. The smile of someone who is accustomed to people understanding things without needing to be told twice. He clasped his hands in front of him. And then he said, "Your Honor," except the way he said it made it sound like anything but. The words were technically correct, yet the tone carried none of the weight they were meant to hold. It came out the way you'd address a colleague you've decided is junior to you. Polite enough on the surface, dismissive underneath, the kind of courtesy that's really just condescension wearing a tie. This case, he said, is a politically motivated mischaracterization of a minor traffic incident involving my daughter. I think we both know that. I sit on the Federal Judiciary Oversight Committee, and I have a genuine interest in seeing that the resources of this court are directed toward matters that actually warrant them. He paused. The smile didn't move. I would simply encourage you to consider the implications of how this morning proceeds for everyone involved." He said it calmly, pleasantly, the way you'd recommend a restaurant. There was no raised voice, no pointed finger. Not yet. Just the smooth, ambient pressure of a man who has spent 3 terms in office learning that the most effective threats are the ones that don't sound like threats at all. I took my glasses off. I set them on the bench in front of me very deliberately, the way I do when I need my hands free and my eyes clear, and every person in the room to understand that what comes next will not be negotiated. The gallery did not make a sound, not one. I told the senator to return behind the bar, or I would have him removed in the same tone I use for everything in this room. Level final, not interested in discussion. He held my gaze for a moment longer than was wise, then turned and walked back to the front row with the deliberate calm of a man who had decided to try a different approach. He sat down. He crossed one leg over the other. He was not finished, but neither was I. I turned to the prosecutor's table. "Mr. Webb, please proceed." Marcus Webb stood up, and I will tell you plainly that the young man looked like he was holding himself together through sheer force of professional obligation. He was 28 years old, 8 months into his first prosecutorial position. He had prepared for this case, and he had not prepared for the senator. And the difference between those two things was written across his face in a way that everyone in that gallery could read. His hands holding his notes were not steady, but he stood up. That matters. He stood up anyway up. "Your Honor," he began, his voice finding its footing as he went. "On Saturday, November 9th, at approximately 11:20 in the morning, the defendant, Natalie Caldwell, drove a 2023 Range Rover into the pedestrian zone of the city's weekly farmers market on Clement Street. She was traveling at a speed later estimated by 2 independent witnesses at between 35 and 40 miles per hour in a zone where no vehicle traffic is permitted." He paused. 4 people were injured. 1 required hospitalization for a broken wrist. 2 others sustained lacerations. The 4th was Dorothy Okafor. I looked over at the gallery. Dorothy was sitting in the 3rd row, arm in a sling, cheek still carrying the faint yellowed shadow of a fracture that had not fully resolved. She was sitting straight. She was watching Marcus Webb with the patient attention of someone who has waited a long time for her name to be said in a room like this. Miss Okafor is 71 years old. Marcus continued, "She is a retired school teacher. Every Saturday, she sets up a display of homemade preserves and baked goods, items she has been preparing since the previous Tuesday." He stopped briefly. Her entire display was destroyed. 6 months of work gone in seconds. The senator did not react. Natalie did not look up. When Miss Okafor approached the vehicle, not in anger, Your Honor, but out of concern, Natalie Caldwell got out of the car, screaming that the vendors had no business being in the road. When Ms. Okafor attempted to respond, the defendant struck her across the face with an open hand. He set down his notes. Ms. Okafor suffered a fractured cheekbone and a torn rotator cuff from the fall that followed. She spent 4 days in the hospital. A bystander recorded 15 seconds of footage, Your Honor. It leaves no room for interpretation. The room was very quiet. I looked at Dorothy Okafor. She was still sitting straight. And across the room at the defense table, Natalie Caldwell had still not looked up from her phone, which told me everything I needed to know about what the next portion of this morning was going to require. I had been watching Natalie Caldwell since the moment Marcus Webb began speaking. And what I had observed was this. Nothing. Not a flinch at the mention of Dorothy's name. Not a shift in posture when the fracture was described. Not a flicker of anything when Marcus said 4 days in the hospital. She was sitting at the defense table in a jacket that had been tailored to fit her specifically. Her hair arranged with the kind of effortless precision that requires considerable effort. And she was looking at her phone beneath the edge of the table with the practiced subtlety of someone who has been told not to do it and has decided that instruction applies to other people. She was surrounded by 4 attorneys, not public defenders, not local counsel, but specialists flown in, the kind who bill in increments that most people in this city will never earn in a month, who carry themselves with the specific confidence of professionals whose clients' problems have a consistent habit of disappearing before trial. They were arranged around Natalie like a perimeter, and two of them were watching the senator in the front row with the alert, calibrated attention of people waiting for a signal. I let Marcus finish. Then I looked directly at the defense table. "Miss Caldwell, how do you plead?" Gerald Ferris was on his feet before Natalie had drawn breath to respond. He informed the court that his client entered a plea of not guilty. And before I could respond to that, he pivoted immediately into a motion to suppress the bystander footage on the grounds that it had been recorded without the defendant's consent in a semi-public space, and that its provenance and chain of custody had not been formally established. Natalie did not look up from her phone. I looked at Gerald Ferris for a long moment. Then I looked past him at his client. Then I looked at Dorothy Okafor sitting in the third row with her arm in its sling, watching the defense table with the quiet, undemanding attention of a woman who has simply come here to see whether this room is what it claims to be. I picked up my pen. We were going to find out. I called a 30-minute recess at 10:15 to review the suppression motion and to give Marcus Webb time to pull the chain of custody documentation the defense was challenging. Standard procedure. I expected to return to a room in roughly the same condition I had left it. What I did not expect was the look on Marcus Webb's face when he walked back through that door. I had been on this bench long enough to know what a young prosecutor looks like when he's been shaken by the facts of a case. That was not what I was looking at. This was the face of someone who had just been asked to make a decision he did not expect to have to make today, and who was still in the process of making it. He sat down at his table. He arranged his papers. He did not look at me. I watched him for a moment. Then I leaned into the microphone. "Mr. Webb." He looked up. "During the recess, did anyone approach you regarding this case?" The courtroom, which had been settling back into its seats, went still again. Marcus Webb looked at me. He looked at his papers. He looked at the senator, who was back in the front row with his legs crossed and his expression neutral in the way that expressions are neutral when someone is working very hard to make them so. For seconds passed. I counted them. In 30 years, I have learned that 4 seconds of silence from a witness or an officer of the court is not nothing. 4 seconds is a decision being made in real time. Then Marcus Webb straightened in his chair, looked directly at me, and said, "Yes, Your Honor." Senator Caldwell approached me in the corridor outside the records office. He indicated that if I were to recommend dismissal of the current charges, he could ensure prosecutorial discretion on an unrelated matter currently under review by his office. He paused. 3 people were present in that corridor. I have their names. Nobody in that room moved. I looked at Senator Caldwell. He uncrossed his legs. For the first time since he had walked through my door that morning, the smile was gone. And in that moment, everything that followed became inevitable. I took my glasses off. I set my pen down. I folded my hands on the bench in front of me and looked at Senator Victor Caldwell with the complete unhurried stillness that I reserve for moments when everything that follows is already decided. And the only remaining question is how long it takes everyone else in the room to understand that what Marcus Webb had just described on the record in open session with the names of 3 witnesses was not ambiguous. It was attempted bribery of a prosecuting attorney during active court proceedings on courthouse property in a case currently before this bench. There is no version of those facts that requires deliberation. There is only one thing a judge does when those facts are placed before her on the record. I looked at my bailiff, Officer Reyes. He was already watching me. "Senator Caldwell," I said. My voice was not raised. It did not need to be. What Mr. Webb has described on the record before this court constitutes attempted bribery of a court officer and obstruction of justice. It occurred on courthouse property during active proceedings. It has been reported by the prosecutor himself and corroborated by 3 witnesses. I paused for exactly 1 second. Officer Reyes placed Senator Caldwell under arrest. Reyes moved. The senator's 2 aides stepped back, not toward him, away from him with the involuntary instinct of people who have just calculated their own exposure and decided distance is the appropriate response. His personal attorney opened his mouth, produced no sound, and closed it again. Gerald Ferris at the defense table went very still. The senator stood as the handcuffs closed, and I will say this for him, he stood straight. But straightness is not dignity when the handcuffs are real. and everyone in that gallery knew the difference. Officer Reyes walked him toward the door. The senator did not speak. He did not look at his daughter. He looked straight ahead with the expression of a man who had walked into this room as the most powerful person in it and was now leaving it in a way he had not once considered possible. When he buttoned his jacket this morning, the doors opened. The gallery turned on him, not with noise, but with something colder and more final than noise. Every face in that room watched him go, and not one of them looked away. The doors closed behind the senator, and the defense table came apart, not loudly. Gerald Ferris was too professional for loud, but visibly in the way that structures come apart when the load-bearing element is suddenly removed. Ferris turned immediately to his associates, and the three of them converged in urgent, low-voiced conference. The two junior attorneys looked the way junior attorneys look when the case they flew in to manage has just become something no one briefed them for. And Natalie Caldwell, for the first time since she had taken her seat at that table this morning, looked up from her phone. She was looking at the doors, just looking at them, the doors her father had been walked through 30 seconds ago with the expression of someone who has just discovered that the floor they have been standing on their entire lives is not floor at all. I did not give the defense table time to regroup. Miss Caldwell, I said, I am denying bail. You have the financial resources and the international connections to constitute a demonstrated flight risk, and the events of this morning have not given this court reason to extend good faith on that question. I am also ordering your passport seized pending the conclusion of these proceedings, and I am adding the matter of attempted bribery as a related charge to be addressed in this docket, given that it occurred in direct connection with your case and on courthouse property. That was when Natalie began to cry. Not quietly, not with the restrained dignity of someone genuinely sorry for what they have done to another person, but the panicked, disbelieving tears of someone who has never once had to sit with a consequence and has just been informed that sitting with this one is not optional. I watched her for a moment. Then I said, Miss Caldwell, you are not crying for Dorothy Alker. You are crying for yourself. Those are two very different things, and this court knows the difference. Natalie's crying had subsided into silence by the time I was ready to deliver the verdict. Not the silence of acceptance, but the silence of exhaustion, of a person who has run out of performances and has nothing left to substitute for the real thing. Gerald Ferris sat beside her with his hands folded on the table. A man who had arrived this morning with a strategy and was now simply present, which was the most honest thing he had done all day. I straightened the file. I put my glasses back on and I delivered what this morning had been building toward since the docket landed on my desk. Natalie Caldwell, I find you guilty on all counts. Aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, and fleeing the scene of an accident. Here is your sentence. You will serve 2 years in a state correctional facility. You will complete 400 hours of community service upon release, assigned specifically to food banks and community markets, the kinds of places and the kinds of people that you drove through on a Saturday morning without slowing down. You will undergo mandatory psychological evaluation because consequences without understanding produce nothing durable. You will compose by hand and without attorney assistance a formal letter of apology to Dorothy Okafor. And you will read it aloud in this courtroom before you are remanded today. You will also record an unscripted video statement. No preparation, no legal coaching, no second takes, taking full and personal responsibility for your actions. That statement will be broadcast across your father's official political platforms and your own social media. The public that watched 15 seconds of footage deserves to hear the full accounting from you directly. Marcus Webb stood. He did not shake. He requested formally on the record the passport seizure and the addition of the bribery charge to the active docket. His voice was steady and clear, the voice of someone who had been tested this morning in ways his training did not cover and had passed anyway. Then Dorothy Okafor rose from her seat. She stood slowly with her arm in its sling, and she walked to the center of the room with the unhurried dignity that had been hers since the moment she first sat down. She looked at me. She did not ask for anything more. She did not enumerate what had been taken from her or demand that the record reflect her suffering in greater detail. She said 3 words. She saw me. I looked at Dorothy Okafor, 71 years old, retired school teacher, fractured cheekbone, 4 days in a hospital, 6 months of work destroyed on a Saturday morning. And I said, "You are always visible, Miss Okafor." This room simply made it official. The gavel came down. And for the first time all morning, the silence that followed felt like something had been restored rather than something had been lost. The story didn't end when the gavel came down. In some ways, it was only beginning. For people in that gallery had their phones out when Officer Reyes walked Senator Caldwell through those doors. For separate angles, for simultaneous uploads, and by the time I had signed the remand order and called the session closed, the footage was already moving faster than anyone in his office could contain it. 18 million views before midnight. Every major network had it on their morning broadcast. The image of a 3-term senator in a dark navy suit, American flag pin still on his lapel, being walked out of a courtroom in handcuffs became the kind of image that people referenced for years when they're trying to explain what accountability actually looks like when it arrives without warning. The FBI opened a formal investigation within 48 hours. What they found took 11 months to fully document and required a task force across 3 states, a decade of judicial interference, campaign finance fraud totaling tens of millions of dollars, 14 suppressed police reports involving members of the Caldwell family and their associates, reports that had been buried so thoroughly that several of the officers who filed them had long since assumed they were simply lost. Senator Victor Caldwell was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. He resigned his seat from custody in a letter his attorney released on his behalf that contained no apology and did not mention Dorothy Afer by name. Natalie Caldwell served her sentence. She completed her community service hours at 2 food banks and 1 farmer's market, the same Saturday market on Clement Street where Dorothy Okafor sells her preserves on weekends. They did not become friends, but they became something. 2 women who share a single morning that altered both of their lives, working out in their own time and in their own way the long, unglamorous distance between damage and repair. Dorothy received $400,000 in public donations within 72 hours of the footage going viral. She did not retire. She expanded. She named her new permanent stall after the morning she walked to the center of a courtroom and refused to ask for anything except to be seen. Marcus Webb was offered a senior prosecutor position before the year was out. He took it without hesitation. As for me, I looked at the clock at 11:14 that morning, looked at my clerk, Michael, and said, "Call the next case." It was a parking violation, a confused, elderly gentleman who had misread the sign. I waived the fine, wished him a good afternoon, and moved on. The law does not stop for senators. It certainly doesn't stop for me. And I want to say something directly to everyone watching this, because I have thought about that morning many times since the gavel came down, and I think it deserves to be said plainly. This story is not about hating the powerful. It is not about politics or party or which side of any aisle you stand on. It is about something much simpler and much more important than any of that. It is about the question of whether this bench, this specific bench, and every bench like it across this country is real. Whether it means what it says it means, whether the law that applies to the confused elderly gentleman with the parking ticket is genuinely the same law that applies to the senator in the navy suit with the flag pin and the presidential ambitions. That morning in this room, the answer was yes. It has to always be yes. The moment it becomes conditional, the moment we start deciding that some people's titles make them exempt, we stop being a court and we become something else entirely. Something that serves power instead of checking it. Dorothy Afor walked to the center of this room and said 3 words. She saw me. That is what this bench is for. Not for the senator. For her, for the teacher crossing the street, for the vendor at the Saturday market, for every person who walks through that door hoping that the room they are walking into is exactly what it claims to be. If this story moved you, if it made you believe, even for a moment, that justice is still alive and still worth defending, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel. Let's build something together that believes in doing the right thing, even when doing the right thing is the harder choice. I have sat in this chair for more than 30 years. I will be here tomorrow, and the law, the real law, will be here with me. Nobody is above it. Not in this courtroom.